Northern Canada's Beaufort Sea. From the town of Inuvik to the peaks of the Richardson Mountains. And stunning beauty along the Yukon's Arctic coast. Exploring life on the Mackenzie Delta.
It's one of the greatest manhunts in the history of Aklavik, or in the history of the whole North for that matter.
The Yukon's northernmost national park.
Inuvik is a reference to protecting the living area of the Porcupine caribou herd.
And a traditional catch on the shores of the Beaufort Sea.
Beluga hunting has been a part of our culture for many years. We harvest a beluga for food value for the next season.
Now, we reveal the secrets of Canada's northern boundary. More than 160,000 kilometers of Arctic frontier. Canada, over the edge. "100 kilometers south of the Beaufort Sea, in the northwest corner of mainland Canada, the town of Inuvik marks one of the North's great cultural crossroads. This is traditional territory for the Inuvialuit peoples of the Western Arctic and the Gwich'in peoples, whose territory lines the limits of the boreal forest. But Inuvik is also home to residents from around the world, with more than 60% of the population of non-native origin. They are drawn by a variety of opportunities. Inuvik has been a hub of natural resource exploration for decades and the resupply base for the western portion of the North Warning System. The town is also a haven for nature lovers. Inuvik's nickname is Land of the Midnight Sun. Today, Inuvik is home to some 3,400 people. And while the cultural timeline of the region stretches back thousands of years, the community itself was established just decades ago. In 1953, government officials decided annual flooding along the nearby Peel Channel was so severe that the community of Aklavik should be moved. A town site was quickly constructed, and many residents relocated here. A project some say would cost $1 billion today. The new town was even known as New Aklavik for 5 years, until taking the name Inuvik in 1958. In the years following, Inuvik grew with schools and government buildings constructed. Decades later, Inuvik boasts all the amenities of a modern town, including a hospital, arena, and its most recognizable structure, known to locals as the Igloo Church. Heading west, we leave civilization behind, as Inuvik marks the gateway to the Mackenzie Delta and the Beaufort Sea beyond. The Mackenzie Delta is a massive stretch of wetlands, the point where the Mackenzie River widens and divides. It is an ethereal landscape, a maze of islands made up of sediments carried by the Mackenzie over 65 million years. And between those islands, dozens of smaller waterways line the horizon, including pristine channels and as many as 25,000 lakes. In total, the Mackenzie Delta region covers 13,000 square kilometers, the largest freshwater delta in Canada, and the 12th largest in the world. "30 kilometers west of Inuvik and only accessible by sea or air, the community of Igloo lies near the western edge of the delta. Igloo is home to 750 hardy residents, most of Inuvialuit or Gwich'in descent. The community is located just north of the 68th parallel, on the scenic shores of the Peel Channel.
My name is Charles Furlong. I'm the mayor of Igloo. I serve a 2-year term and I look after the community. It's in the heart of the Mackenzie Delta, about 100 kilometers inland from the Beaufort Sea.
Like Inuvik, Igloo has been a cultural crossroads for generations.
Originally, Igloo was a stopping place for the mail run and other activities from Fort McPherson, which is about another 150 kilometers from here. This was the halfway point to Herschel Island, where a lot of activity was going on in them days. And it was also a meeting place for the Gwich'in people, Inuvialuit people, who congregated around this area to hunt and trap. This attracted many people from all walks of life. Besides the Gwich'in, Inuvialuit, and the Métis people, Igloo attracted a lot of white people that came here to trap and hunt. Many of them chose to live in Igloo, and if you just look in the phone book, you'll see a lot of Scandinavian names and Irish names, Scottish names of people that actually settled in Igloo and raised their families.
The community grew through the early 20th century with the establishment of a Hudson's Bay Company trading post and the Roman Catholic Church. By 1952, 1,500 people called Aklavik home. But then, everything changed.
The population was growing, and I guess the government at the time took a look at Aklavik, and it was prone to flooding every spring. And also, room for expansion just wasn't here. So in the 50s, the federal government began to meet with the town fathers and saying that we needed a new location for Aklavik. So they moved 35 air miles east to where present-day Inuvik is. People from Aklavik began moving to Inuvik in 1957, 1958.
Despite the relocation, many residents stayed, drawn by abundant resources in the waters and hills surrounding. And while Aklavik's most notable feature may be its history and mix of cultures, Mayor Charlie Furlong says the town's top attraction can be found in the local cemetery. In the 1930s, trapper Albert Johnson killed an RCMP officer and led officials on a manhunt through the frozen trails surrounding Aklavik. Albert Johnson would become known as the Mad Trapper.
Well, here we are in the cemetery in Aklavik, and we're going to walk over this side here and look at the grave of the famous Mad Trapper of Rat River, Albert Johnson, who in February of 1932 gave the RCMP and a local posse a good run, and he was finally captured up in Eagle River. Johnson killed an RCMP officer, wounded a few others, and there was a great manhunt on him by the local RCMP and the posse. Even the old-timers and Aboriginal people say that, they didn't see how a person could survive in such cold weather at that time. It was one of the greatest manhunts in the history of Aklavik, or in the history of the whole North for that matter.
Decades after the Mad Trapper incident, and decades after relocation, Mayor Charlie Furlong says he believes Aklavik will continue to survive.
Hunting and trapping is still practiced here in our community. Many people still go out on the land and practice their traditional lifestyle and survive on the benefits come from hunting and trapping. Trapping industry has ups and downs, and depending on the world market, but people still do it, and there is a lot of hunting though for caribou, moose, and other animals like that. So it's still a well-practiced tradition in this community. Aklavik is still a thriving community. It's rich in natural resources. There's all kinds of game in the area. The hunting is good, and it's home to me. I grew up here, and I'm proud of this community, and like many of us in this community, we work together, and we want to see Aklavik survive and continue for the next few generations.
Beyond Aklavik, we trace the waters of the Peel Channel on its trajectory to the Beaufort Sea, some 50 kilometers to the northwest. And as our latitude increases, our landscape begins to change dramatically. Far below, the trees of the Delta region begin to disappear as boreal forest is replaced by barren Arctic tundra. But even here, far from civilization, the landscape and water surrounding are a destination for hunters and trappers. It is a region rich in resources that have sustained Aklavik residents like Wally Terrell for generations.
Well, I grew up with my grandmother, and we stayed in a bush and just continued to enjoy it. You had to learn when you were young. If you wanted to do something, you had to learn to cut your own fish, skin your own fur, and just mainly do everything yourself if you wanted to continue.
Today, Wally Terrell heads west from Aklavik on a route he's taken for decades. On the open waters of the Peel Channel, he finds his float and prepares his net.
People all got their own floats, so you make sure you set your net on your own float. I let my net out. The wind is blowing in the right direction, so it's pushing me to shore. And you just let your net out.
Using the current, Terrell secures his net in place, driving a post into the shallow waters.
So once I get to my stick, I just pull my net tight, tie my net on, and there it is, your net is set.
Scientists say dozens of fish species live in the Mackenzie Basin. And here, near the end of that waterway, Terrell confirms the fish are plentiful.
And this is what they call a broad whitefish. Never expect to catch fish this quick. I forgot my pail.
With his setup complete, Terrell returns to shore. Here, he must tend to his smokehouse, where the real magic begins. Wally has become famous in Aklavik for producing a variety of smoked fish he calls Wally sticks.
This is where I do all my fish cutting, is in here. I do my fish cutting in here because it's been raining so much, and when you cut fish, you like to be dry, and you wouldn't want your fish to get wet while you're cutting it.
Inside his garage, Wally cuts the fish into narrow sticks.
This whitefish right here, we fillet it. We make it thinner. It's going to dry faster, and it don't spoil. And then we just cut it like this. You gotta have a good sharp knife. We tried so many different knives, and we finally came up with these knives. You see down here, there's bone. So there's bone down here, eh? So we continue cutting this. Cut it like that. And you can feel a bone with your fingers. And then when you get to the bone, you go like this. And then we throw this away because it's full of bones.
Once cut, he dries them with the help of his grandson, William.
Oh, ever since he was a young kid, he was going in the bush with us. And he learns everything.
Together, they put the sticks on racks and move them to the nearby smokehouse.
We put the fish, the strips on a grill. We lay them out side by side, and then after that, we walk it to the smokehouse.
The fish will stay in Wally's custom smokehouse overnight. When they are done, they will be transformed into Aklavik's favorite treat, Wally sticks.
Quite a few years ago, we started making them, and then people really enjoyed them. And we were making them, and next thing, more and more people found out, and we couldn't keep up. Finally comes to the taste. Oh, boy, they taste good.
For Wally Terrell, the waters lining the community of Aklavik have brought sustenance for years. He hopes that will continue for future generations.
I'm not used to living in, big places. Like here, I could go any place I want. Here, I like to be on the land. I enjoy going out in the fall. You go to a different community, there's nothing to do. Here, there's always something to do. You could go fishing, hunting. You could do anything you really want. I've been brought up this way. I just enjoyed living on the land and enjoy fishing. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't bother with it.
Continuing northwest from the Peel Channel, we reach the limits of the 80-kilometer-wide Mackenzie Delta. Here, islands, lakes, and winding waterways are left behind as we ascend to a vast plateau lined by barren Arctic tundra. But it's not only a change in landscape. This plateau marks the western extremity of the Northwest Territories and the eastern frontier of the Yukon Territory. Like the Northwest Territories, the Yukon is massive, measuring more than 482,000 square kilometers. It features an incredible array of landscapes, from mountains and rolling hills to lush river valleys and barren Arctic splendor. Continuing west, the hills continue to rise as we reveal one of northern Canada's great hidden gems. Just kilometers from the Northwest Territories' Yukon border, the peaks of the Richardson Mountains rise as high as 1,600 meters. Their landscape is varied, a mix of Arctic tundra, subarctic forest, and to the north, ethereal barren rockland. Some people call them the northernmost branch of the Rocky Mountains. But scientists say they are actually an eastern extension of the Alaskan Brooks Range. The Richardson Mountains cover more than 26,000 square kilometers, running north-south, parallel to the Yukon territorial border. In In geological terms, the Richardsons are unique, the largest set of mountain ranges in Canada, untouched by glaciers. Continuing north, on approach to open Arctic waters, we follow the contours of the Blow River. The Blow River is just one of many rivers that originates in the Richardson Mountains, flowing north to the Beaufort Sea. And like the channels of the Mackenzie Delta, they hold rich fishing grounds and are home to incredible wildlife, including the Porcupine caribou herd. The Porcupine caribou herd has a population of more than 150,000 caribou, named for the herd's birthing grounds along the nearby Porcupine River. Their habitat covers much of the Yukon and Alaska. They are known for their beauty and for their 2,400-kilometer migration, the longest migration of any land mammal on Earth. From the Richardson Mountains and the contours of the Blow River, we continue north, soaring above pristine Yukon scenery. And finally, as we soar above one rugged bluff, the tundra of the Yukon meets the open waters of the Beaufort Sea. On the Yukon Territory's northern coast, the frigid waters of the Beaufort Sea are an Arctic gem. From autumn to spring, this vast waterway is frozen solid, opening to marine traffic for just a few weeks each year. It is considered a marginal or sheltered branch of the Arctic Ocean, named in honor of British Rear Admiral Sir Francis Beaufort. In total, the Beaufort Sea's mainland coast stretches more than 1,000 kilometers, from the Northwest Territories to the Yukon, all the way to Alaska. But despite its remote location and harsh climate, the Beaufort Coast is home to resilient wildlife, including the mighty moose. The moose is one of the most awe-inspiring sights on the Yukon landscape. They are beautiful creatures, dark brown or black in color, standing 2 meters high. And male moose like this one feature shovel-like antlers and lengthy beards hanging from their massive jaw. They are solitary creatures for much of the year. Scientists estimate the Yukon is home to 70,000 of these land mammals. And the Yukon is a unique moose habitat. A transition zone between the woodland or northwestern moose and the tundra or Yukon-Alaska moose. With adult males weighing as much as 700 kilograms, the Alaska Yukon moose is considered the largest subspecies in the world. Back to the coast, we continue northwest, following the shores of the Beaufort Sea. And amazingly, far from Inuvik and Aklavik, we see signs of human civilization. All along these shores, at Shingle Point and Herschel Island beyond, seasonal camps have been constructed. They are shelters used by hunters throughout the Beaufort Sea region, taking part in one of northern Canada's most famous annual hunts.
My name is Jerry Cassoon. I'm a guide with Up North Tours out here in the Beaufort Delta. We're at a place called Whitefish Station.
Jerry Cassoon says whaling has been a part of Inuvialuit culture for generations.
Well, beluga hunting has been a part of our culture, the Inuvialuit culture, for many years. And we continue every year to try to get out there, try to harvest a beluga for food value for the next season. And the hunting of the belugas has been going on for a long time. One of the stories I remember about hunting the beluga and seeing that and listening to that story is of a fellow by the name of Nuligak. And he was just over here at a place called Whitefish right here, but he was on the other side of the island over there. And he talks about back in the late 1800s about the Inuvialuit people going hunting the beluga whales out into the Beaufort Sea over here, out into Kugmalik Bay. And the first kayak leaving, many kayaks following behind. When the first kayak was out of sight, there were still kayaks that were still going out there to go and try to take part in the beluga hunt.
From an active camp on the shores of the Beaufort Delta, Cassoon reveals the intricacies of the operation.
Well, this one here is what we call a whaling camp. what happens is the people that own this little spot here, and they park their boats right here, and then they'd be watching from on top of the hill, looking out towards the Beaufort Sea over there, waiting for the spout of the beluga whale. Once they see that spout of the beluga whale, well, they'd head out with a couple of small boats. This is a shaft for a harpoon, and this is one of our it's a very important tool to the Inuvialuit. There's a harpoon head that would go on here, and when we're up very close to the beluga whale, we follow behind them and we harpoon them first before we shoot them. Because if we shoot them here, then we're going to lose them, and they're going to start rolling in the current, and we'll never find them. So what we do is we harpoon them first with a harpoon like that.
Once the whale is harvested, it is brought to the beach where processing begins.
This is what we call here, the muktak yard, and we'll hang the meat of the beluga, the muktak itself. We'll hang them on these racks here. After they've been processed over in the yard over there, we'll hang them on the racks to get a little bit of, let them maybe a little bit more water drain off of them, maybe a little bit of excess fat maybe drain off of them.
Once drained and dried, the meat, or muktak, can be preserved on site.
Okay, this is what we call the smokehouse, and sometimes when they're hanging some of the fish that they might catch in the fish net, they'll go inside the smokehouse and they'll hang them on those racks in there, and they'll put a little fire underneath just to get some smoke onto it. When they're hanging some of the meat that they get from the beluga whale and they want to put a little bit of smoke into it, they'll put it here into the smokehouse. And this here again is just made from material that we find right here along the beach. Everything is pretty well local. A few pieces of plywood, you know, a piece of tarp. The whole process of harvesting a beluga out in the Beaufort, bringing it into the camp, and putting it away into the muktak pots might take about maybe 4 days in total.
Jerry Kassoon says generations after it began, whaling remains key to the culture and diet of the Inuvialuit peoples who live along these shores.
Well, the beluga whale is very important part of the diet especially for my people here, the Inuvialuit people of the Western Arctic. If you get a small chunk of beluga muktak, let's say maybe about a 2-inch by 2-inch piece of beluga, it's got just as much vitamin C as what you might find in a couple of limes.
Continuing west from Shingle Point and Herschel Island, we trace the calm waters of the Beaufort coast. But while the Beaufort Sea is considered sheltered or marginal, it is also massive. The Beaufort Sea stretches from Barrow, Alaska, to Cape Bathurst on the mainland, and to Prince Patrick Island and Banks Island offshore. In total, the Beaufort Sea covers more than 475,000 square kilometers. And here, in this remote corner of Canada's north, signs of climate change can be seen. Scientists believe warmer temperatures along the coast are causing permafrost, or permanent underground ice, to melt The results are evident along the banks of the shore. Hillsides slowly collapsing on themselves, just meters from Arctic waters. Further west, beyond the banks of the Beaufort, we return to open stretches of tundra and one of Canada's northern wonders. This incredible expanse of beauty is known as Inuvik National Park.
My name is Mervyn Joe, and I'm Cultural Resource Technician for the Western Arctic. Inuvik National Park is located in the northwestern part of Canada. It's at the northern tip of the Yukon Territories. It borders the Alaska borderline to the west, and then to the east it's bordered by the Babbage River. And in the southern part, it's bordered by the other national park, the Vuntut National Park. Inuvik, it's an Inuvic word, means a place where giving birth. That is a reference to our Porcupine caribou herd. We're protecting the living area of the Porcupine caribou herd.
But while Inuvik is known best for its caribou herd, it is also home to other wildlife and unique plant life.
You also see like doll sheep, the moose, the three types of bears, a polar bear, the grizzly bear, and a black bear. All kinds of birds, like shorebirds, seabirds. The plant life is very unique because it wasn't not glaciated, and so we got some very different plants from all over the other parts of the world.
With its remote location, wildlife and plant life here is virtually untouched. A fact Mervyn Joe says might not be so bad.
I like it because it's so remote. There's no roads. There's only a few places you could land with an aircraft, and then it's got to be equipped with like the Tundra tires. And then with the floats, you could use a float plane into the waters, either overland by snowmobiles. That's what it.
But for Joe, and many like him, the story of Inuvik National Park comes back to family.
Just personally, I like it because my grandfather and my dad's been in that area before, years and years ago, and then now I'm in here today, and I like it the way it's protected.
Continuing west, we return to the waters of the Beaufort Sea and take a journey through time. Here, far from civilization, an abandoned oil and gas vessel sits, awaiting its next assignment. The oil and gas industry flourished here in the 1970s. But in recent years, it has slowed, a fact some believe is good news for the marine life in the region. And back on shore, the Comacook Beach radar station is a relic of the Cold War. when stations like these lined the north, tracking the movement of the Soviet military. Finally, just meters from shore, we see one final sign of human civilization. Here, a lone obelisk marks the 101st meridian and the northernmost land boundary dividing Canada and the United States, as the Yukon Territory meets the state of Alaska. This is the first of 191 obelisks along the meridian, spaced roughly 5 kilometers apart. They mark the international border in a straight line, due south, more than 1,000 kilometers, to St. Elias Mountain and the Pacific Ocean beyond. From the islands and channels of the Mackenzie Delta to the peaks and valleys of the Richardson Mountains, to the Yukon-Alaska boundary, the Beaufort Sea region is a stunning, unique landscape, set far from civilization. With lush hillsides and vast protected areas teeming with life. Modern communities like Inuvik and Igloo thriving. And traditions of old carrying on in the waterways surrounding. This remote region, where the river meets the sea, is a gateway to awe and wonder. Here, on the edge of Canada.